The door clicked behind me before I could even reach the handle again. I froze. Are you serious? I knocked, harder this time. My voice trembled, not from fear, but from disbelief. Through the glass, I saw him, standing there, smiling, and behind him, a woman, barefoot, walking across my living room like she belonged there. My fingers tightened around the grocery bags. My heart didn't break. It went cold. Open the door, I said, quieter now. He didn't move. Instead, the porch light snapped off, plunging me into darkness. That was when it hit me. This wasn't anger. It wasn't a mistake. It was planned. He thought he had just kicked me out of my own house. I slowly stepped back, staring at the reflection of myself in the glass.
Calm. Still.
Because what he didn't know, what he never bothered to check, was that the house he just locked me out of was never his to begin with. I stood there longer than I should have. Not crying. Not yelling. Just listening. Soft laughter drifted through the door. It sounded careless. Comfortable. Like I had already been erased. 8 years. Reduced to that sound. I slowly set the grocery bags down by the door. Milk.
Bread.
Things I had bought for a home I was no longer welcome in. For a moment, my chest tightened. Not with sadness, but with something sharper.
Clarity.
I picked up my phone, stared at the screen, then locked it again. No calls. No messages. Not yet. I adjusted my coat, straightened my shoulders, and walked down the driveway. Each step felt steady, controlled, because the truth was simple. He thought I had nowhere to go. He thought I needed him, but I had already prepared for this moment long before it arrived. And very soon, he was going to realize just how wrong he was. My name is Victoria Hale, and everything he was enjoying inside that house, I built it, not loudly, not publicly, but carefully, quietly, legally. To everyone else, I was the supportive wife, the one who showed up, smiled, and stood beside her husband while he chased big dreams. They didn't see the late nights I worked, the promotions I earned, the accounts I managed. They didn't see where the money really came from. He didn't either. Or maybe he chose not to, because it was easier to believe he was the provider. Easier to believe I needed him. I slid into my car and sat there for a moment, hands resting on the steering wheel. 8 years replayed in my mind, but not as memories, as patterns, missed signs, ignored instincts, and one very important detail. One signature, one document, one decision I made years ago that would change everything now. It didn't start with betrayal. It started with distance. At first, it was small things. Late nights at work. Short replies to simple questions. Then came the silence. He would sit across from me at dinner, scrolling through his phone, barely looking up. Everything okay? I asked once. Yeah, he said flat. Just busy. Busy became constant. Then came irritation. The way he sighed when I spoke. The way his tone sharpened over nothing. I noticed everything. Not because I was suspicious. Because I paid attention. I watched the shift happen slowly, like a crack forming in glass. And I understood something early on. People don't change overnight. They reveal who they've been becoming all along. So I didn't argue. I didn't beg. I prepared. Because deep down I already knew, one day, this would break. And when it did, I needed to be ready. When we bought the house, he said he didn't like complicated things. Paperwork stressed him out. Legal terms bored him. Can you handle it? He asked, waving a stack of documents toward me. I nodded. Of course. And I did. Every form, every clause, every signature line. I read everything carefully, because that's who I am. But more than that, I understood something he didn't. Ownership isn't about who pays the loudest. It's about what's written down. So when it came time to finalize the deed, I made a quiet decision. Not emotional, not reactive, just smart. One name, one owner.
Mine.
He never asked to see it, never questioned it. He trusted me to handle it. And I did. Sitting in my car now, I let out a slow breath. Because tonight, that single decision had just become the most important one of my life. His business looked successful from the outside. Nice office.
Clean branding.
Confident presentations. People believed in him. But I knew the truth behind it. Every major step forward came from money I provided. My bonuses. My savings. My careful planning. Just until things pick up, he used to say. And I agreed. But I never gave blindly. Every transfer was documented. Every amount recorded. Structured as a loan. Clear terms. Signed agreements. Not because I didn't trust him, but because I trusted myself. Love doesn't cancel responsibility. He never paid much attention to the details. He saw support. I saw structure. And structure matters when things fall apart. I started the engine and pulled out of the street, leaving the house behind. Because while he was inside celebrating control, I was already holding the blueprint of everything he was about to lose. I had seen her before that night. Not clearly, not directly, but enough. A scent that wasn't mine lingering on his jacket. A message preview that disappeared too quickly when I walked into the room. A sudden need for privacy where there had never been any. I noticed all of it. And I said nothing. Because confrontation gives people time to prepare lies. Silence forces truth to reveal itself. So I watched. I listened. I paid attention to the small details others ignore. And piece by piece, the picture became clear. He wasn't just distant. He was replacing me, testing a new life while still standing in the old one. That's why tonight felt so easy for him. So confident. He thought the transition was complete. That I had already faded out. What he didn't realize was that I had never stepped out of the picture. I had just stepped back, waiting. That night wasn't sudden. It was the result of months of quiet buildup. Each small act of disrespect stacked on the last. Each lie layered carefully until it became his reality. By the time he locked that door, he wasn't reacting. He was acting on confidence. Confidence that I had no power. Confidence that I would break. Confidence that everything we built belonged to him. I almost admired it. Almost. Because confidence without awareness is dangerous. It blinds you. It makes you careless. And carelessness leaves openings. I gripped the steering wheel tighter as I drove. He believed he had control of the house, the life, the story. But control isn't about who stands inside the door. It's about who holds the foundation. And I held all of it. He just didn't know it yet. But he would. Very soon. The hotel room was quiet. Simple.
Clean.
Neutral. Exactly what I needed. I placed my bag on the table, took off my heels, and sat down slowly. For the first time that night, I let myself breathe fully. No noise. No tension. No pretending. Just silence. I opened my laptop and logged into my files. Everything was there. Organized.
Secure.
Documents. Contracts. Records.
Proof.
Not emotional proof. Legal proof. The kind that doesn't argue. The kind that ends conversations before they begin. I scrolled through each file carefully, not because I needed to, but because I wanted to feel it. Control. Clarity. Readiness. He thought tonight ended something. But it didn't. It started something. And this time, I wasn't reacting to him. I was setting the pace. And once I started moving, there would be no stopping it. The next morning, I didn't rush. I woke up early, showered, and dressed like it was any normal workday.
Calm. Composed.
Focused. Because panic makes mistakes. And I couldn't afford any. I sat by the window with my phone in hand. Then I made the first call. A property attorney. Clear, direct, professional. I need to enforce ownership rights on a residential property, I said. No long explanation. No emotion. Just facts. The second call followed immediately. A financial advisor. Activate repayment terms on all outstanding loans, I instructed. Again, simple.
Clean.
Final. There was no hesitation on my end, because everything I was doing now had already been planned long ago. This wasn't revenge. This was execution. And step by step, everything he believed he controlled was about to shift out of his hands. Mrs. Hale, I've reviewed the documents. The attorney's voice was calm, steady. The property is solely in your name. I leaned back in my chair, eyes closing briefly. I understand, I replied. But hearing it out loud felt different. Solid. Confirmed. Real. There are no shared ownership claims, he continued. You have full legal authority. Full authority. That meant no arguments. No confusion. No gray areas. Just one clear truth. The house was mine. I thanked him and ended the call, placing the phone gently on the table. For a moment, I allowed myself to feel it. Not victory. Not yet. But certainty. Because in situations like this, certainty is everything. He had locked me out of a place he thought he owned. But ownership isn't about who holds the key. It's about who holds the right. And I held all of it. By noon, everything was in motion. The notice was drafted carefully. Clear language. No emotion. No room for interpretation. I reviewed it twice before approving it. Every word mattered. Every line carried weight. By evening, it was delivered. Official. Documented. Final. He had 72 hours to vacate the property. Not negotiate. Not argue. Vacate. I imagined the moment he received it. The confusion first. Then disbelief. Then the slow realization. I didn't smile. Because this wasn't about satisfaction. It was about balance. He had made a decision the night before. Now I was responding with clarity. Not anger. Not noise. Just action. And actions like this don't shout. They land quietly and change everything. My phone started ringing before the evening was over. His name flashed across the screen.
Once. Twice.
Then again. I watched it without answering. The rhythm became almost predictable.
Call. Pause.
Call again. I imagined him pacing, trying to understand what was happening, trying to regain control. But control doesn't return just because you demand it. I let the phone ring until it stopped. Then it started again. This time, I picked it up, not to answer, but to silence it. I placed it face down on the table and walked away. Because the man who locked me out without hesitation didn't deserve immediate access to me now. He could wait, just like I had waited. And in that waiting, he would begin to understand something important. Things had changed.
Completely.
The voicemail came in late that night. I play it once. Then again. Victoria, what is this? His voice sounded tight, controlled at first. Then it cracked. You can't be serious. This is my house too. Silence followed. Then a sharper tone. Call me back. I stared at the screen for a long moment after it ended. Not angry, not hurt, just certain. Because the confusion in his voice told me everything. He didn't know. He had never known. And now he was starting to realize something was wrong. Very wrong. I set the phone down and turned off the light. The room went dark, quiet, steady. And for the first time since that night, I slept peacefully. Because the truth was already in motion. And there was nothing he could do to stop it. The next step was simple. I activated the loan agreements. Every document I had carefully prepared over the years came into play. Formal notices were sent. Repayment deadlines established. Penalty clauses triggered. Everything precise. Everything enforceable. No raised voices. No emotional confrontation. Just paperwork. The kind that doesn't argue back. By midday, confirmations started coming in.
Received. Processed.
Acknowledged. I sat at the desk, reviewing each update calmly. Because this wasn't about overwhelming him. It was about structure. One step after another.
Clear.
Measured. Inevitable. He thought locking me out would end things. But in reality, it had only opened the door to everything he had ignored for years. And now, piece by piece, that oversight was catching up to him. He had built his life around an image. Confident. Successful. In control. That was the version people saw. But the truth? It was held together by numbers he never fully understood. Numbers that now demanded answers. Within days, questions started coming in. Investors wanted updates. Partners wanted clarity. Deadlines approached faster than he could respond. Because the money he had used to build everything wasn't his. And now it was being called back. Legally. Formally. Without delay. I didn't need to say anything publicly. I didn't need to explain. The structure spoke for itself. And structures don't lie. They either stand or they collapse. By the end of the week, the first cracks were visible. Not loud, not dramatic, but real. And once something like that starts to break, it rarely stops halfway. I heard about her leaving through someone we both knew. Not directly. Just a quiet mention in passing.
She's gone, they said.
No details. No drama. Just gone. It didn't surprise me. People like her don't stay when things become uncertain. She had stepped into a life that looked stable, comfortable,
Easy.
but when that image began to shift, so did her loyalty. I imagine the moment she realized things weren't what they seemed. The hesitation, the doubt, then the decision to walk away.
Just like that.
No fight, no attachment, and in a strange way, that told me everything. She was never the real problem. She was just part of the illusion. An illusion he had created. And now, without that illusion, he was standing alone, exactly where his choices had placed him. He showed up at my office without warning. I saw him through the glass doors before he saw me. His posture was different. Less confident. Less controlled. More urgent. He walked in quickly, scanning the room until his eyes landed on me. "Victoria," he said, stepping closer. I didn't stand. "I need to talk to you." His voice carried tension now, not authority. I closed the file in front of me and looked up calmly. "There's nothing to discuss," I replied.
His jaw tightened.
"I made a mistake." I held his gaze, steady and clear. "No," I said quietly. "You made a decision." The words landed between us, heavier than anything else that could have been said. For a moment, he had no response. Because deep down,
He knew I was right.
and that truth was something he couldn't argue his way out of. Everything moved forward exactly as planned. Court filings were submitted. Deadlines were enforced. Every step followed a clear process. No shortcuts. No gaps. Just structure. My attorney kept me updated daily. "Everything is proceeding smoothly," he said. And it was. Because there was nothing to challenge. The documents were solid. The agreements were clear. The timing was precise. There was no confusion, only consequences. I stayed focused on my work, my routine, my life. Because this wasn't something I needed to chase. It was already in motion. And once something like this begins properly, it doesn't slow down. It doesn't hesitate. It continues until it reaches its natural end. And his situation? It was moving toward that end faster than he expected. On the final day, everything was quiet. No shouting. No arguments. Just procedure. I wasn't there when it happened.
I didn't need to be.
But I received confirmation shortly after. He has vacated the property. Simple.
Clear.
Final. I sat with that message for a moment, letting it settle. Not as victory, but as completion. Because the moment he locked me out, he thought he had ended something. In reality, he had started this. And now it had come full circle. The house was empty again. Not taken. Not shared. Returned. Exactly where it belonged. There was no satisfaction in imagining his exit. No need for it. Because the outcome spoke for itself. And sometimes, that's more powerful than any reaction. The financial impact followed quickly. Accounts were reviewed. Assets were evaluated. Everything connected to his business came under pressure. Because obligations don't disappear. They wait. And when they are triggered, they demand to be met. But he didn't have the resources anymore. Not without the support he once relied on. Decisions he had delayed for months now came back all at once. Compounded. Heavy. Unavoidable. I didn't interfere. I didn't adjust anything. Because this wasn't about punishment. It was about process. And the process was doing exactly what it was designed to do. By the end of that week, it was clear. The business couldn't hold. Not under that weight. And once that realization settles in, everything else begins to follow. People started talking. Not loudly, but consistently. Questions moved through conversations. Details surfaced slowly. Not rumors.
Facts.
Quiet, documented facts. And facts are difficult to challenge because they don't rely on opinion. They stand on proof. I didn't share anything. I didn't need to. The situation spoke for itself. And when people started connecting the pieces, the picture became clear. The success he had presented wasn't what it seemed. The stability he claimed
Didn't exist.
And once that perception shifts, it's hard to rebuild it. Because trust, once questioned, rarely returns the same way. I continued my routine unchanged. Because this wasn't about controlling the narrative. It was about letting the truth stand on its own. Within months, everything unraveled completely. The business closed. Not suddenly, but steadily. One loss after another. One decision leading to the next. Until there was nothing left to hold it up. The lifestyle he once showed off disappeared just as quietly. The confidence, the control, the certainty.
Gone.
Not taken.
Lost.
Because it had never been stable to begin with. It had been built on something temporary. And temporary things don't last under pressure. I heard updates occasionally, but I didn't follow them closely. I didn't need to. Because the outcome was already clear. The man who once stood behind that door, certain of his position, had lost everything that gave him that confidence. And, in the end, there was nothing left for him to stand on. The first night I returned to the house was quiet. Not heavy. Not tense. Just still. I walked through each room slowly, taking in the space. Nothing felt unfamiliar. But everything felt different. Not because the house had changed, but because I had. I paused in the living room, looking at the same place where I had once stood outside. That moment felt distant now, like something that belonged to another version of me. I set my keys down on the table and sat for a while. No noise. No interruptions. Just peace. And for the first time in a long time, I felt completely settled. Not because I had won anything, but because I had reclaimed something important.
My space.
My control. Myself. I didn't win because I fought harder. I didn't win because I reacted faster. I won because I prepared. Because I paid attention. Because I made decisions when things were still calm. That's what made the difference. Not anger. Not revenge.
Clarity.
I had known my worth long before that night. I just hadn't needed to prove it until then. And when the moment came, I didn't break. I acted. Quietly.
Precisely. Completely.
Some people think power is loud, that it needs to be seen and heard to matter. But real power? It moves differently. It waits. It builds. And when it finally shows itself, there's nothing left to argue, because the outcome is already decided. And the truth? It always speaks for itself.